Alright, so we're not going to save out that repeatable texture, but we're going to save out this one so we can test it out inside of Maya. So you could test it as you go, like each one of these kind of areas that you paint. You could kick out the maps and test them over in Maya, or you could paint the whole thing, get it blocked in, and then test it over in Maya. So we're going to save out the bump. Maybe we'll save out the color too, just for kicks. And I'll show you where to kind of plug that in as well. UVs we want to hide, so I'm going to go ahead and hide the UVs because we don't want those saved on top. So that's why the layer's on top, and we can just go ahead and turn off that little eyeball and it's hidden. That hides any of our bump detail, and then we're just left with the base. So with the bump turned on, and we only had one layer we painted, we're going to go File, Save As, and we're going to continue to save these as PNGs. So I'm going to save as a PNG, and that's going to flatten this. And because it's a PNG, we're not going to lose any information. So we already started out with a JPEG, which isn't optimal because there's already some noise in it. So saving this as a PNG is going to allow us not to have any additional noise put into it. Any image that you're going to use as a texture, something to add to your material, or a image plane, you should be saving in your source images directory. So I'm inside my project, inside the source image directory. You can see some textures we made in lecture last night. I'm going to call this hardware underscore BMP, all caps, and that's what I use to signify my bump map. So let's go ahead and save that as a PNG. Hit OK. And then I'm going to turn off the bump and turn on the color and do File, Save As, Hardware. I usually use ALB for albedo, or you could do AB for albedo. You could do DIF for diffuse, COL for color. So, figure out an abbreviation that's good for you. I'm going to use COL just so I know that this is my color map. And we want to save this in the source images, not the images, and we want to make sure it's a PNG. And then save. And by doing a save as, notice we're still in this as a PSD, so I'm just going to hit Command S to save this. It's also good to iterate on your files here too, so we could put a numerical naming convention behind this, and as we block in these textures more, we would keep saving them as a new file. So let's jump to Maya. Currently, we have the default materials on all of this. These two guys right here is what we're applying the material to, so I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to shift right click, and I'm going to go to, just right click, don't shift right click, assign new material. And if you have RenderMan installed, you should see the RenderMan tab right here and click on BXDF. If you're not seeing that, you need to go back to the download section and follow the steps to download install RenderMan. We're going to use a PXR surface, and so we'll apply that. If yours does not turn green, don't worry. If you go to your settings and preferences, this little gear and the running man down here, we're going to go to RenderMan, and if you go to workflow, I just have my default Maya surface to none. If you set it to something else, it'll look gray out there, and default it's set to something else, so yours won't turn green. But this just lets me know there's RenderMan material on there. So, excuse me, from here to apply things to this surface, I can click here, and I can say this is my wire underscore harness underscore MT for material. Right, so it just, if I name something else wire harness by putting that MT there, it just gives me a way to separate out the names. So diffuse is where we can put our color information, and this one will be easier because we can plug it in right out here potentially, And then under globals, we want to put our bump. And under primary spec, we just want to add a little specularity to this so we can see our bump. So I'm actually going to turn my edge color for primary specular all the way to the right. And because this is metal, I'm going to take my face color and bring this up pretty high as well. And then we're going to open up the hypershade. So I can click this little icon right here, or I can go to Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. So both those ways will launch the hypershade. If you do tear off any of these menus by accident, because if you lock it up in the corner here, that's not necessarily going to lock the menus inside of here. You can always reopen the menus going to your Windows, and these are all the kind of menus that are there. And then you can also dock these. So if I accidentally kind of tear this off, I could relaunch the material viewer. And if I just kind of hover, you gotta hover just right. Come on. Let's grab it from the corner more. Whoops. This one's a little trickier. Let me scale it. Sometimes you just have to scale it up a bit to get it to start wanting to work. Okay, let's try killing this one, and let's go Window, and that was Property Editor. Oh, that was in Property Editor. That was Material Viewer. Let's launch that again. There we go. So just launch it again, and we can pop it back into place. So if that happens to you, that's how you can get it back. I'm going to click on the wire harness right here and click the box with the two arrows, and that maps out my input-output connections. And I'm going to select this guy right here, and I'm going to go to my Maya 2D textures and make a file node. And with this file node selected, or with this guy selected, I'm going to take that file node and I'm going to middle mouse and hold that down, and see how it says file 3? I'm going to drop that in the color. And now I've mapped that to the color. And I always turn my filter type to off so it's not blurring the textures at all. And we want to work in linear color space, so I'm going to linearize. Or actually, it is sRGB, so this should end up linearizing my textures. Actually, I won't go too much into that workflow because you'll learn about it later on. So right now, let's just kind of apply textures. Inside of image name, I'm going to click here, and that should go straight to my source images. And I'm going to grab that hardware color and click open. Alright, so now we have our color texture in here. I'm going to click back over here, and I'm going to go to the RenderMan patterns, and up here I'm going to type in PXRBU, and it's going to start bringing up shaders that are named like this, or patterns. And I'm going to click PXR bump, and that's going to create this guy out here. So I'm going to click on wire harness to bring up the attributes for that material, and I'm going to look for globals, and I want to put my bump here so that it affects all channels. So I'm going to middle mouse where it says bump to, and then drag it and drop it right over the word bump, and that'll connect that in properly. I'll click on the bump, and under texture I'm going to click on file name, and I'm going to go to my proper source images. So let's go to coil 2, source images, and grab the hardware BMP and click open. So that's going to bring my bump in. Alright, so everything there should be set up the way that I need it. So in the next video I'm going to run through how to launch RenderMan for the first time, set up a light, and then we'll take a look at the render.